This video highlight is brought to you by our Wall of Famers who make it possible for me to carve time out of my very busy real-life schedule and do what it is that I love to do. Be with you. Thank you. Okay. This space MMO solved the stop killing games problem a year ago. This is in conjunction with the Stop Killing Games movement, which is a movement that I think has some merit to it. And the reason I think it has some merit to it is when you buy a game, these publishers should not just be like, okay, let's scrap this. You never own this. The money you paid doesn't matter anymore, and you have nothing to show for it after you buy. It's like they literally take it away out of your hands. Primarily, it's because most of the times these developers and publishers don't have the funds to keep servers up and going. So I understand on the other side of the spectrum that plight. However, there should be the game itself should not just be taken away from gamers. Now, we've got Obsidian Ant, who I like, who is going to talk about a space MMO that solved the Stop Killing Games problem a year ago. I would probably guess, in my opinion, that it's going to be a game I used to play that I was absolutely in love with, that I miss dearly, that I wish was actively alive, but it was just so mishandled. The project's title is Dual Universe. Now let's see what Obsidian Ant thinks. Dual Universe, amazing. What they were trying to do for the whole genre was amazing. It was different compared to a lot of other titles at the time.
The gaming community is fed up with studios snuffing out online games and erasing them forever. But one intrepid studio already solved the issue by handing the keys to the game to its community, ensuring the game lives forever. The game is Dual Universe.
Aha. Thank you. Okay, let's continue.
Now, over the past year or so,
there's been that
massive movement that we all know about.
I literally missed this game so bad.
Kind of
this game was so fucking cool. I'm telling you what, you could build anything you wanted. It had a great land system. It was in its scope and what it was trying to accomplish, monumental. For gaming, it would have been great. It was a utopia. It would have been a utopian game experience. Crafting and building was fantastic. It was like Minecraft on steroids, dude. It was ridiculously awesome with science fiction muscle behind it. You could build anything. You could build bases. You can build ships. You had to have propulsion down right. You had to build the correct engines. You had to have it aerodynamically built to handle atmospheres. Atmospheres and gravities were different. It was fantastic. In terms of like the math mattering, it mattered in Dual Universe. The economy at the very beginning, fantastic. It was one of those games that was alive and flourishing for a little over a year. And it was so fun seeing people go around on different planets and just start new entrepreneurial ideas and just do their own thing. Like you would go to different lands and you would have organizations and you would see what it was they were building. I got a series here on the channel called DG and DU, and it is really worth a watch. I think I only put like 4 or 5 episodes out. But it was a really fun time with a lot of people who are still here in our Discord. In fact, Aries, who is a member, has continually supported this channel before Dual Universe and after Dual Universe. And I just super appreciate people like that are just down for the community, not just for a title, which is awesome. And he still plays Dual Universe, but it's just so empty. It's so empty, and I blame it all on Nova Quark. I blame it on mismanagement. It was definitely a fumble. It was definitely a fumble by the adults in the room.
Demands that when a game is shut down, an online game, that it doesn't die, and instead should leave something behind. It's a simple plea for preservation. Don't burn entire virtual worlds that players paid for. Major publishers have been slow to heed the call, but one small studio quietly went ahead and did exactly what Stop Killing Games is asking for. In late 2024, Nova Quark, the team behind the ambitious space MMO Dual Universe, handed its players the keys to keep the game alive long after the official servers empty out. Stop Killing Games was kickstarted, literally and figuratively, by YouTuber Ross Scott in April 2024. And this after Ubisoft shut down its always online racing game The Crew and left paying customers with nothing to show for it. Scott blasted the practice of killing games as an assault on both consumer rights and the preservation of media, and understandably he struck a nerve.
This was the best section to go into these market areas where these kiosks stood, and you would see people doing market actions. Oh my God, I miss it. The vibe was so cool. They had little central hubs and districts on Alioth, which was the main planet, and a lot of the trade came from a central hub on Alioth, and you would go down there, would be ships parked everywhere around the base. I mean, it was a hub, and people would go in and out. Ships were flying in and out. People were coming down doing like crazy cool transactions, putting in market orders, buying and selling goods. It felt so alive. You'd come here after like crafting something or mining goods, and you'd post it on the market, and it was just, oh man, the vibes here, the nostalgia right now, there's nothing better. Like, this was so cool back in the day. I miss it so bad.
The initiative quickly gained traction through petitions and headlines. Ubisoft's decision to pull the plug on the crew sparked a widespread backlash. An uprising
and the land system was fantastic. Like, you would buy parcels of land.
On the crew sparked a widespread.
See those little honeycomb grids?
Backlash.
Like these little honeycomb grids, you would buy parcels of land. Like each one of these units of land, each one of these little hexagons were miles. Like you could walk around forever. From one end to the other, it would take you about 3 minutes, 5 minutes of just like flying really fast, you know? So like, and then when you walked around, it took a longer time, but like each one of these little hexagonal units was up for sale, and every month you had to pay on it to keep it. And you could own multiple ones depending upon your own skill rank. You could own up to, I think it was pretty large. I want to say like 10, 15, 20. And then if you had an organization, you could like spread it out. Oh my God, it was so fun. It was so cool.
Peace out, Chuck. Against always connected games. Under the mounting pressure, Ubisoft publicly promised it would never let this happen again with its newer games, specifically pledging offline modes for The Crew 2 and its successor. Governments and gamers alike were taking notice, but as regulators and big publishers only began grappling with solutions, one lesser-known MMO developer went ahead and solved the problem in practice. So, in order to understand how Nova Quark and Dual Universe got to the solution for Stop Killing Games, we need to understand the initial problems. How did this all come about? Well, there is a story behind Dual Universe, and as we recount it here.
This is the thing. I read a comment from Masao says, I do not buy anything from Ubisoft. I feel they are the leader of the pack with shutting down online games too. And then Hugh agrees. He says, I quit with their stuff and Electronic Arts stuff too. Both are great at grifting the gamers. You two are absolutely right. Biggest grifters out there. And it's like seppuku. It's like they're committing seppuku on themselves. Like the past 5 to 6 years, it's just them committing seppuku. It is the craziest thing I've ever seen. It's like any decision that they make is so far not in the favor of a gamer that what are they doing? They're so disconnected to the gaming culture, to gamers. They are. I've never seen companies this disconnected from the gamers. It's just ridiculous.
You'll see how much of it actually ties into so many of the things we've seen in over the years in many other games. Now, before it came a preservation poster child, Dual Universe was an audacious dream. In 2016, Paris-based Nova Quark launched a Kickstarter for a continuous single shared universe, a sci-fi MMO where all players would share one massive editable universe.
It's awesome.
The concept blended elements of EVE Online's player-driven politics with the boundless creativity of Minecraft, all in a seamless galaxy with no instance zones. Over 8,000 backers pledged money to this vision, raising about €565,000, and Nova Quark attracted additional investors on top. The studio's proprietary server tech, called CSSC, promised to support everyone in one world at once, a technical holy grail for MMOs, and early previews and alpha tests in 2017 to 2018 impressed many with Dual Universe's voxel building tools and scope. By the time a beta arrived in 2020, a large community of player-run organizations had already formed, building cities, space stations, and economies in anticipation of a revolutionary sandbox experience. So Dual Universe was, in essence, aiming to be the next evolution of the MMO, a metaverse-like society limited only by players' imagination. Upon the game's official launch, Dual Universe exited the beta and released in September 2022 with a subscription-based model. No free play here.
It was primarily the subscription-based model that did it to them. It's like they shot themselves in the foot with the subscription-based model. Also, somewhere along the line, the CEO lost all of his passion and he got out because he realized the people he had partnered with, and he said, fuck these guys. They're not about the vision. They're not about the dream. And then he jetted. And once he jetted, the heart of the project went out, and what was left was the carcass. And the corporation decided to make really stupid decisions. One of them putting this on a subscription-based model, which really killed it. And they gatewayed it. They basically gatewayed it, and so then they didn't have the numbers to keep the servers online. And so what ended up happening is they took away game features that basically the amount of telemetric data that was on these servers was ridiculous, because you actually could mine into these planets and moons, and you could get resources by mining, and they weren't renewable resources, by the way, which is another reason. It was like hardcore mode. It was like, these are the resources on the planet, first come, first serve, good luck. And it was like what? Like there's no spawn, there's no respawn of the resources. And so it was just like a mad gold rush, and people went in mining the shit out of these, and there was plenty of resources for everyone. They had put so much inside of these planets, and all that data, the digging, the tunnels, the resources, was an absorbent amount of money to keep these servers running, to keep that telemetric data. And because they gatewayed it with the $7 subscription model, they didn't have the funds to keep the servers going. So they took away mining as a game loop, and it killed everything. And they made these magical mining units that you would put down on the ground to get certain amount of resources every hour, which basically meant that there was no scarcity. Basically, it was like an endless amount of resources, just timed, right? And it changed the dynamics of the economy, and people who are like hardcore supply demand economists or Austrian economists, they were just like, fuck this game. And they left it. And then they lost more money, and it started to die a slow death. And I was reporting on it at the time, and I said, don't do it. You're going to kill yourself. And they didn't listen.
Fortunately, you had to pay a monthly fee to access the universe. Many long-time testers were eager for the persistent universe to finally begin, but the transition was bumpy. Novaquark decided to wipe all the beta progress at launch, resetting the universe so everyone started afresh. That move, whilst not uncommon in MMO launches, meant veteran players saw years of their creations erased overnight.
Yep.
More worrying,
you had people that had built so much in this game, and they restarted from a starting point when they did the magic mining thing, the patch. And you had people that had shops. They created their own items that were very popular. Like, people would create their own ships, people would create their own structures, and then they would sell those structures. And you could buy templates and blueprints, and you could essentially sell your own creations in this game. And people had been doing this for years. And then when they restarted it, all that was gone. It was like wiped away. All those years of putting into it was just completely wiped. And people were just like, so that was another death nail. And I said, you guys are fucking up. I was like, I don't know how many more times I got to tell you guys that you're killing this game. Like, you're killing this game. Who were left after the CEO left Novaquark was a cancerous bunch. They just devoured it like a virus. They devoured what was left of this, and it was like a money sink, and they were trying to suck as much money as they could because they knew the ship was going down. It was horrible what they were doing. It was horrible to see the game turn into that. For somebody that was a big fan of Dual Universe and the vision here, this is the thing that scares me, in game development, is people are monumental to the project. There are people in Star Citizen that are monumental, very important to the project. For instance, in this case, you had the CEO of Novaquark leave. This is what I could imagine if Chris decided to leave Star Citizen. Yeah, like if Chris left Star Citizen, I could see the same thing happening to Star Citizen as what happened to Dual Universe. And that's why when people are like, fire Chris, I hear this voice. Fire Chris. Chris is terrible. Chris Roberts is the devil, blah, 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 blah. No. Because this is a perfect example. The parallels here are ridiculously perfect. Look what happened to Dual Universe. This is a perfect example of what happens when the leadership and the heart and the passion leave. Vacuum. And those people that are left,
features that early backers had expected were still missing or incomplete at launch. In other words, the game arrived in a somewhat bare-bones state, despite its long development and roughly at this point $21 million in total funding secured over the years. Dual Universe's grand ideas were intact, but the polish, the content depth, and the gameplay itself, the gameplay systems, were not fully realised, and there wasn't much time left to get them there.
These things, when the magic mining machines came into, that was like get out of town. You just made all resources never ending. They're infinite. You just made every resource infinite. How is there any value to any of this if they're all infinite? If the resources are infinite and there's no exhaustion, how if I can magically mine minerals from the ground with these big fucking space dildo mining machines and just magically have the resources without doing any of the work, no more mining because you guys fucked up and gave it a subscription-based model. Now all the telemetric data is gone and now we can't mine anymore. And a really cool game loop is gone, but we're replacing them with magic mining space dildos. Like, you've ruined it. You ruined it. I miss going to these planets and I miss the landscapes. And they were very simple. It was very voxel based, but the feels were amazing in this game. Like making your own ship, whether it was a ship that was only meant to fly in the atmosphere, or if you made an actual spacefaring ship and testing it 1,000 times over and over again to perfect the ship. By far, some of the coolest crafting experiences that I've ever had in a video game, ever. Right? And then the environments were so damn cool. Oh, I would love to log on. Like during the day, I would just be like, oh, I can't wait to log in. I can't wait to log in. I want to see what's going on. What happened? What changed?
The consequences of all of this was a decline in population. Initial interest at launch saw a modest spike. On Steam, the game peaked at around 792 to 800.
And people were making Star Citizen ships in the game. It was so cool, man. We had a dude in there who's still in our Discord, Rocket Man, and he made a javelin. This motherfucking ship was huge, dude. He made a javelin in Dual Universe. It was so awesome. We flew it around. It was great. Dual Universe, playing the past 2 hours ago. 3 24-hour peak. 5. Wow, that is the saddest thing in the world, man. Oh, man. Oh, damn. All that vision, that dream. This is the pitfalls, man, of game development. This is why I continually cover Star Citizen. This is why I tell people they're actually doing a better job than most people think. They're keeping people interested. Player numbers are at peaks. They're bringing in stuff. They're keeping people. They're bringing in new blood. Like this is definitely what you don't want. These numbers are really bad.
Concurrent players in early October 2022. And that doesn't count backers using the standalone client, so the real peak was likely quite a bit higher, but nowhere near blockbuster MMO numbers. After that, the numbers only fell. By a few months in, many people started to feel that Dual Universe's servers were feeling empty, and Steam's stats, Steam's charts were averaging pretty low concurrent players by this point. Not many players started to bow once they realised the game's depth didn't match its lofty promise, and community started throwing around the dreaded label "dead game" just months after launch. To be fair though, a loyal core stuck with Dual Universe, impressed by what was possible in it. The voxel built-in and scripting systems were indeed powerful, and some truly stunning constructs had been made. But here's the thing, and it's an age-old story at this point, an MMO needs a critical mass of active players to sustain its economy and warfare.
Combat sucked. It always sucked. All this thing, you're seeing this stuff, this shit very rarely happened. Space combat sucked. I was always saying you guys need to do better. This is a pipe dream. Like what you guys are watching is manufactured through NovaCorp to make it look like it was like this. It was not like this all. This was something that was manufactured to make it look more amazing than it was. The space combat sucked.
And Dual Universe was slipping far below that threshold. By early 2023, markets had stagnated in the game, territories lay abandoned, and server activity was so quiet that players-run events all but dried up. NovaCorp kept the lights on and issued a few patches, but meaningful updates slowed to a trickle. In fact, the last major update...
Landing was so fun. Like, taking off and landing from these planets was just absolutely brilliant. Going through atmospheres, amazing. Like, creating something on the ground and launching through the atmosphere was a task. You had to have a certain amount of thrust. It had elements of Kerbal, and there were definitely physics involved. You have to have the right amount of thrust. It can't weigh too much. Like, it was very much a very for a voxel-based building game was as realistic as it could be. And then when you finally made it, it was just like fantastic. When you launched into space, the space flight was as real as it can get in a voxel-based kind of simulation. It was fantastic. It was a blast. You had to have a certain amount of fuel. You know, you had to find the fuel. You had to make the fuel. You had to buy the fuel on the market. You know, there were so many different things. You could build your own components. You could buy your components from other people. You could make, like, there were so many aspects to this game, and you had to link the things together. You had to link the engines to fuel compartments. You had to, you know, like, everything was so well planned. It was amazing. They had a linking system where there was an internal linking system that linked the ship together in terms of, like, security and fuel, and it was, like, so deep. The gameplay was super deep.
That's version 1.4, landed in June of 2023, after which development largely went radio silent. It seemed Dual Universe might quietly fade away, an expensive experiment that didn't pan out. And yes, this is all recounted because no doubt many of you have heard similar stories, and perhaps even almost exactly identical stories in other games many times over the years, and this, in some respects, is what, at least in part, has led to the Stop Killing Games initiative. And then we come to the next part of the story. In August 2024, a plot twist saw something new, something surprising. Rather than announce a full shutdown, NovaCorp announced something called MyDU, a standalone edition of Dual Universe that players could run themselves and run it offline. On the 19th of August 2024, the studio released this self-hostable client and server package, essentially giving the community the means to keep Dual Universe alive on private servers.
That's cool.
It was,
the only
of
good
course,
thing
a
they
remarkable move. In one stroke, Dual Universe went from a dying live service MMO to a product that players physically owned, that you could literally install as and when you want, and you weren't dependent on other people's servers or technology. As NovaCorp's announcement put it, with the MyDU client, you'll be able to host your own Dual Universe server. And they emphasised the fact that players would now have the freedom to play Dual Universe without subscription. For a one-time purchase, priced around $35, anyone can download MyDU and spin their very own Dual Universe.
And they knew that that was the final thing that they could do to make the money that they could make before they were dead. It was their final way of, like, sucking money away from people after they fucked up 1,000 times. But the irony is that it's a really good thing they did that, because what ended up happening as a positive is that people could take this on their own on their private-based servers and do this on their own, man. And that's really the right thing to do. And this is the solution to the Stop Killing Games drama that's unfolding with us. It's just give people the ability to make their own servers, and if they're successful and kind of find a way to do this, and they can make their servers as big as they want for as many people as need be, they could essentially monetize it for themselves if they wanted to, I believe. Maybe not, but that would be kind of cool. Somebody was super successful at this and they actually found more and more people that were interested in Dual Universe, like a rebirth of it, but that would never happen. I just think it's dead. Like, there's nothing that's going to bring Dual Universe back, even on somebody else's private server. If the guy eventually went through AWS and got the top tier God package, you know, I still think, in a way, I still think this game is dead. It would be cool if there was a rebirth, though, if somebody actually could do that, like on their own private base server and just, basically make this game alive again. That would be just the coolest thing.
The sandbox up, free of any monthly fees or dependencies on NovaQuark's infrastructure. In other words, NovaQuark effectively opened the game's universe to its players.
Oh, wow.
Not by releasing the
Fingers.
code, but by releasing control.
Fingers
Dual
are saying
Universe
that's already
would no longer
happening.
live or die by the studio's balance sheet. It could live on as long as there were PCs out there willing to host it. So from a technical standpoint, MyDU is the full Dual Universe client and server software packaged for private use. NovaQuark ensured it was
that's a good
relatively
idea,
accessible.
dude.
They ensured it
It's
could
just-
run on both.
I wonder if you tried to monetize it, make it more successful than it originally was, if that's something against the TOS. I don't know. Like that, it's kind of a neat idea, right? Where like you could do your own private server and scale it up if you could get people interested in this game, and then give people free access to it if they're like supportive of your Patreon page. That's a really good idea. But it wouldn't be much different than, though, the subscription-based model that they fucked up on in the first place,
The Windows and Linux, and they even provided a one-click installer for Windows users to get a local server running with no technical know-how. Of course, hosting a persistent universe isn't light on hardware. NovaQuark estimated that a typical machine could handle roughly 10 to 15 simultaneous players per CPU core, and that's before performance suffers, meaning community servers would be a small scale compared to the official single shard that we had originally, and that of course spanned multiple clusters. Still, for a lone player or a tight-knit group of friends, that's more than enough. MyDU also enables godlike administrative powers. Server owners can grant themselves unlimited resources, spawn items, or even mod the game in limited ways.
This is one hell of a structure.
NovaQuark introduced a plugin system for mods. In essence, MyDU isn't just an offline mode. It's Dual Universe's toolbox handed over to the community. Crucially, NovaQuark also provided a way for players to save their creations from the official MMO and transfer them to MyDU. They built an exporter for blueprints, the data for any player-made construct, allowing players to download their ships and buildings from the live servers and then import them into a MyDU server. Years of player creativity, from elaborate space stations to giant voxel sculptures, could thus be preserved and carried into private universes. It was a clear nod to game preservation, ensuring that when the official servers eventually go dark, the community's effort doesn't disappear into the void. Now, NovaQuark's motivations for releasing MyDU weren't spelled out in a dramatic manifesto, but NovaQuark's FAQ did state the offline client would let players continue enjoying Dual Universe without a subscription. Many people felt back then that the Dual Universe MMO was of course on life support, barely a few dozen players online most days by mid-2024, and NovaQuark's development on the title had effectively ceased. Rather than quietly shutting down the servers and orphaning the game, the studio chose a strategy that is almost unheard of, and certainly something we don't hear from the larger companies out there. They chose to give the community a way to continue the game on their own terms. In my opinion, and maybe you'll agree with this was very much in the spirit of Stop Killing Games, and long before this became a massive headline here in 2025. And here's the interesting thing, NovaQuark didn't trumpet it as such. There was no grandstanding about the cause. They didn't big themselves up or point out how good they were being. They were just simply, it was just a simple outcome that did exactly what Stop Killing Games advocates. Dual Universe is now effectively unkillable. As long as a copy of MyDU exists somewhere in someone's archive, the game can be restructured and played offline or on fan-run servers, and this all indefinitely. This small studio then accomplished what players are asking for of the biggest companies in the industry. Of course, this isn't all about saying that NovaQuark did everything right here, that they were a perfect company, because obviously they made some mistakes, some poor decisions were made along the way. Not all the players were happy as the years rolled on, but in the final analysis of things, NovaQuark did the right thing. They didn't kill the game, and they went well out their way to ensure preservation. Now, to be perfectly fair to all of this, the whole situation, as well as the Dual Universe community, the community's response to MyDU was, of course, a mixture of gratitude, excitement, as well as a touch of cynicism as well. On the positive side, MyDU was celebrated by the remaining fans as a lifeline for the game they loved. Dual Universe always had a niche but passionate group of builders and explorers who had poured thousands of
Owning the land was so cool. You had these beacons that you set up.
and IDU was celebrated by the remaining fans.
Hold on a second. See these beacons? These beacons were so cool. You had to purchase these beacons. You could actually even manufacture these beacons and sell these beacons. But you had to have a beacon in your possession. You had to go onto the map and look at a plot that you liked. And boom, you set it down, and then it like broadcasts a signal, and then it shows you the entire space, and then you can name it. And it was a cool experience. It was like a explore and conquest vibe, you know? Like everything on that plot of land was yours, and everything underneath was yours, you know?
Much of cynicism as well. On the positive side, IDU was celebrated by the remaining fans as a lifeline for the game they loved. Dual Universe always had a niche but passionate group of builders and explorers who had poured thousands of hours into its world.
I did.
For them, the fear of losing everything.
I had a big factory like this, man. I was making jet engines. What else was I making? I'm trying to remember. Glass. I was making glass and windows for people that wanted to buy like windows that were builders and architects. What else was I making? All the fuels. I made all the fuels, and I just had like a factory set 24/7, and I would come in with all of the mining materials, whether I mined it personally or bought them. I would load them up, and I had them all linked together to make what it is that I planned on making. It was so cool. You could label signs. You had like these little routers that would like you to link multiple containers to, and you click on this router, it would show you like everything inside of all the cargo containers. The UI was fabulous. It was downright fabulous. It was a good time.
All those constructs and scripts and social structures
and contraptions
was very real as the population dwindled. Now, with Offline Edition, they could preserve their work. Indeed, within days of MyDU's release,
I wish this
players
was a
began
success. I really do. I'm so sad that
from
it's
the
not.
official server and reassembling them in their private worlds. And some used MyDU as a personal creative mode with unlimited resources, finally free from the MMO grind. Others set up
Karma,
small dedicated servers to continue playing with their friends, essentially treating Dual Universe like a customizable digital D&D campaign. The tone of the game's Discord and subreddit was largely relief. Whatever happened to NovaQuark or the official servers, Dual Universe would still be playable. And even new players curious about the new sandbox could theoretically buy MyDU and experience Dual Universe's Galaxy Solo, and all of this at their own pace. Not everyone, however, was entirely pleased. Some in the broader gaming community looked at MyDU with skepticism, calling it a last-ditch cash grab by NovaQuark. Their argument, after charging subscribers for years, the studio was now asking for another $35 for the privilege of an offline mode, essentially monetizing the game's death. There was also a lot of understandable frustration from those who felt that Dual Universe never fulfilled its promises. For them, MyDU was too little, too late. If the game wasn't fun or populated as an MMO, turning it into a private sandbox didn't magically fix that. And then we have the fact that whilst NovaQuark did allow converting subscription time into a MyDU license for existing customers, many lapsed players didn't have active subs anymore, meaning that even loyal early backers were effectively asked to buy the game again. It's certainly a valid critique and one I completely can sympathise with and totally understand, although it's also worth noting that maintaining an MMO indefinitely is not free. NovaQuark's approach then at least ensured that those who truly wanted to keep Dual Universe had the option to do so. But yes, of course, the preservation for a price model didn't sit well with everyone. Interestingly, that's not where the story ends. Ultimately, even with MyDU out there in the wild, NovaQuark did not immediately shut down Dual Universe's official servers. As of mid-2025, the original MMO server is still online, for the small numbers of subscribers still roaming around the in-game galaxy.
It's gotta be so empty.
The server's population is a shadow of its peak. Often just a handful of players are there online and via Steam at any given moment, and community estimates put total active users at very low numbers indeed, maybe even the mere dozens. Build metrics then, Dual Universe's days as a commercial MMO appear to be behind it. And yet, Dual Universe is not dead, far from it. And all thanks to my DU, the game's universe is being kept alive.
It's dead. No, not trying to poop on Obsidian Ant's kind of narrative here, but it is dead. It's a shame. It's a shame. It was a really great. It was great, man. The vision was amazing on this, but it's dead. You know, it's still alive in terms of the people that are making their own servers, though, and that's what matters. Like, if you're a hardcore fan, at least you can have your dream and live inside of it. But the true dream is that the dream is expressed outwards so that others can see and feel how amazing it is. You want an MMO to be alive. And the real way is that the passion that comes from the very creation, the origin point from the creator's brain in his heart or hers, expressed outwardly so that it's felt amongst as many people as possible. Good game design, good mechanics. You log into the MMO and you just have a lot of fun playing it. And as you got to create as little friction as possible. It's got to be as smooth and frictionless as possible an experience. The more friction you put in it, the more people are going to be like, eh. And by friction, I'm talking about game mechanics. I'm talking about making sure that the game mechanics are solid, that there's meaning behind what it is that you're doing in the game, that in fact you're going to put crafting in the game, that it has depth, that every item actually is not the easiest to get in terms of the resources, in terms of how much you need, in terms of the playability in crafting. The level of detail and complexity in terms of game mechanics when it comes to anything industrial has to be top notch. You will pull in people and they will play forever. And that experience has to be frictionless. That's where it really matters. If you can do that, then I think you have a very live MMO. You layer on top of the industrialized gamers, the explorers, those that are into combat, empire building. You have many different layers in an MMO. And if they can function and thrive in the sandbox together, wow, that's when the dream becomes a reality. And that's truly what you're trying to do in game development. You're trying to get your passion, your idea out there in such a manner that it expresses itself amongst a very large group of people, and that the game mechanics are as frictionless as possible and fun. And then it will catch on, and that dream then becomes a reality. And then that is the dream. That's the dream. It's a great solution for stop killing games. Every game that gets to this portion of its life cycle towards the death of it has this point at which you have to label it, okay, are we in the stop killing games? If a title has gotten to this point and it's at the stop killing games moment of its life cycle, you know that the game is pretty much dead. The dream did not express itself and become a reality. But if you're still a backer and a hardcore person like some of these dual universe Novians are, good for you guys for loving this game. I love this game still as well. However, it is dead. The cool thing is that it will live on and they can stay inside that dream, but it has never become a reality amongst the larger masses of gamers out there. And that's the sad thing. So the dream stays a dream forever, and you're stuck inside that dream bubble, and it will never become like what you pictured that it could be. And that is sad for Dual Universe. That's really sad. I'm sorry about it. But in terms of like keeping it alive so that the hardcore gamers still love to play it regardless and stay in that dream bubble, then here you go. This is a solution. Man, this is my worst fear with Star Citizen. Like, my worst fear with Star Citizen is this. What a shame that would be, right? What a shame that would be. And I hope I never see it. I hope I never see that day. I hope the dream becomes a reality.